Hello, and welcome to another edition of AppSec Decoded, where we talk about building trust into software. I'm Taylor Armerding, security advocate with the Synopsys Software Integrity Group, and I'm joined today by two of our experts, Sammy Migues and Tim Mackey, to talk about some of the major trends we've seen in cybersecurity this year. Sammy is principal scientist with Synopsys and has been a co-author of the Building Security in Maturity Model report, better known as BSIMM, since it began in 2008. The latest BSIMM 12 was released in September. Tim is principal security strategist within the Synopsys Cybersecurity Research Center, which also has its own acronym, CyRC. He has a wide range of software security expertise, but his primary focus is open source software, which makes up the large majority of every code base developed in recent years. Welcome, gentlemen, and thanks for being here. All right, let's pivot to ransomware, which is always trending, I'm afraid. In fact, I think I just read on the Lawfare blog today that it increased 62% from 2019 to 2020. I suspect it'll be pretty close to that this year. So,
did it?
Pardon me?
But did it really? I mean, did it increase, or did reporting increase, or did recognition increase?
Oh, excellent. All excellent points. I don't know the answer to any of those.
Come on, you're answering questions here, young man.
Okay. Well, we know I think we can agree ransomware isn't new. It is not a new problem. But attackers do know it's one of the best ways to ensure they get paid for their efforts. It seems to get more rampant and more damaging every year. Of course, hackers still do have to get in, and often that's done through social engineering attacks like phishing, which is getting ever more sophisticated. But they also do so by exploiting software security defects and misconfigurations. So, Tim, you start on this one. For victims, there are generally three primary initial questions. Should I pay? How do I recover? Should I attack back? How would you advise them?
Well, number one, don't attack back. If you're in a situation where there's an illegal act, performing another illegal act as retribution, it's not going to win you any points. It might win your ego some points, but no, don't attack back. So you described a criminal enterprise when you said it's all about the money. If we look back at how things have progressed from a cybersecurity perspective over the last decade plus, what we saw people originally doing is data exfiltration. Let's get the data out. Let's sell the data. The data is the value. Now we have the data is the value, but hey, I can encrypt the system and then go and extort some money. So that's part of the value. And of course, you get the multi-million-dollar, hey, I've paid this to go and recover my systems. We'll get to the recovery part in just a second. The third part of the enterprise is now I can sell a list of gullible victims who are willing to pay money. So what's not included in those stats that you saw was how often a victim who paid is subsequently also victimized, potentially from the same group, potentially from another group, because, well, all of a sudden, hey, I've got cyber insurance. I'll just pay the cyber insurance becomes the easy answer. And the reality is recovery is a disaster recovery event. You need to treat it as if you had an outage, which means that you need to have in place proper recovery procedures. You need to have defined what your recovery point objectives and recovery time objectives are. You need to know what it means to reconcile the data and the transactions that were in flight. You need to do all of the hard work and not just assume, hey, I can write a check and suddenly some Bitcoin goes out of my account into somebody else's account and the magic key arrives and presto changeo, I now have a working system. Because most people who've fallen victim to a ransomware attack find out very quickly that that key doesn't necessarily bring the whole system back, because they were testing how well to encrypt the system. Now, the decryption was somebody else's problem. So it's kind of in the non-functional requirement side of things.
I feel like we keep asking the same question over and over, and I mean that in a good way. You know, how do I recover? Well, I mean, that shouldn't really be a thing. I mean, if you've never practiced dumping all your systems to some backup media, I was going to say to tape, but wow, that, you know, I had flashbacks of 1984 there. If you've never backed up all your systems to tape and recovered them, then, you know, this probably shouldn't be the first time. You know, and yet we see that over and over. We have no backups of this. We have no backups of this. We've never tried to recover a whole bunch of laptops. We can't recover these servers. We don't know how to do this over the network. I can't transfer that much data over the cloud. I mean, it just.
Yeah, it's like, just look at Facebook from a few weeks ago. They were down for the better part of a day over a misconfiguration.
Yeah.
For something they probably never pre-tested.
The problems linger for days from BGP problems and from DNS problems and from time server problems. Imagine how long, you know, problems go from not being able to recover, you know, customer data and all that other kind of stuff. But the point of how do I recover? You recover by working the process that shouldn't be being worked for the first time. I mean, really, there just isn't any other answer.
All right. Okay, getting into the, once again, the proactive versus reactive place. What can or should organizations do to decrease the chances of becoming a victim in the first place? Sammy.
Well, yeah, so that's going to be the same basics that we talked about earlier. I mean, but I think the difference today is we had a whole bunch of people who understood, you know, ports, Unix gurus, Unix admins, and they could harden your Unix. And then we had firewalls, and we had people who could, or routers, and then we had all the CCIEs and the CCNPs and all the Cisco folks who could do that. And then we had firewalls and the next generation firewalls, and then DMZs and all the people who could sort of keep up with that one thing at a time. Pardon me. And then all of a sudden, you know, we had infrastructure as code. We had thousands of microservices instead of one big monolithic web app. We had things deployed in multiple clouds. We had other people's code running on our code. The attack surface just exploded. Plus, as you said, the ability to do phishing attacks got way more sophisticated. The ability to get people to execute code or zero-click attacks, whether it was on a mobile phone or on my laptop or in my email or wherever. Today, although I haven't necessarily seen it in practice, but you know, the use of AI to simulate voices as yet another form of phishing. You know, hey, this is the CEO, and gosh darn, it is the CEO, except it's not the CEO, it's some AI. You know, today. Being prepared is starting to become being almost too paranoid to get your job done. There's almost nothing that can come into your work environment that can't be faked by someone who wants you to do the wrong thing, whether it's an order, a service ticket, a network connection, DNS data, file transfers, port requests, open source dependency updates, patches. There's almost nothing that can't be 100% fake. And so it goes way beyond vigilance at this point. It's configuration plus vigilance plus training plus automation plus third-party support plus log analysis. It's a lot of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, and it becomes a lot of stuff that needs to be part of an incident response plan, so that you know who is responsible for doing what at what point in time. So you don't end up in the proverbial scenario where somebody's in the middle of trying to restore a system, but nobody pulled the log off of it. So you can do the forensics to figure out how they got in the first place. That you know who's supposed to tell the CEO that, wait a minute, we've got bad stuff happening right now, you should be prepared. Or that who's going to communicate with which regulator about what. Those shouldn't be things that you're trying to figure out when you're in the middle of an attack. Like that's the point where it's too late, and that's the point where things go wrong very, very quickly.
Yeah. All right. How in the face of all this, how should organizations balance risk management for their organizations and their customers? Tim?
So this one's a very interesting one. So if you look at how risk is profiled, do I care first about recovering my company, or do I care first about recovering the data of my customers and ensuring that my customers have confidence in me as an entity to do the right thing and protect them? So that's one of the big decision points that organizations need to make, because the natural instinct of most corporations is to circle the wagons and prioritize recovering them over what their customers are going to say. And then, hey, you know what? I can send out a nice little note that says, well, your data appears to have been part of this breach. And guess what? I've gotten you 3 more years of credit monitoring services to add on to the 55 years that you already had of credit monitoring services. And there's probably going to be a lawsuit and you'll get $1.85 out of it. I mean, like that's the way that the world is right now. So by prioritizing the customer experience, you end up prioritizing both. And that's where I wish more organizations would invest.